The knocking came again, harder this time. Noah knew better than to open his door at night. Out here, storms didn't just hide weather, they hid people. Then he heard it, not a man's cough, a child's. And in that moment, Noah had a choice. Open the door or let the cold decide who survived the night. Another cough cut through the wind, thin and wet. Noah opened the door. Cold rushed in, biting his face and flooding the room. The woman looked up, eyes wide and rimmed with ice. "Please," she said, "my daughter's burning up. I don't need much, just warmth." Noah stepped aside without answering. Inside, slow, they crossed the threshold together. He closed the door and slid the bolt home, the sound final and steady. The woman adjusted her grip and sank onto the chair by the stove. The child whimpered, her face flushed beneath a wool hat that had been mended too many times. "I'm Evelyn Ward," the woman said. "This is Lila." Noah nodded once. "Noah." He crouched and set 2 fingers against the child's neck. Too hot. Her breathing fluttered, fast and shallow. He stood and filled the kettle, hands already moving. The stove answered with a low roar. He tore a strip from a clean cloth and soaked it, wringing until water ran in a thin line across the floor. "You can set her coat there," he said, pointing. "By the bench." Evelyn did as told. Her hand shook, but she listened. That mattered. Noah laid the cool cloth across the child's forehead. Lila sighed, the sound loosening something tight in his chest. He kept his voice even. "How long's the fever?" "Since morning. The truck died before dark. I thought I could make Bethel." "You didn't," he said it gently, "but you got here." The wind slammed the walls. Snow scraped like gravel. Noah fed the stove and poured hot water over dried leaves he kept for nights like this. He stirred honey in and passed the cup. Evelyn took it with both hands, whispering thanks that sounded worn thin. Minutes stretched. The child's breathing eased. The room filled with heat and the quiet work of staying alive. Noah watched the door, then the window, then the girl's chest rising and falling. He had not planned on company. He had not planned on choice. But here it was, sitting in his chair, wrapped in steam and snow. Outside, the storm showed no sign of moving on. Inside, Noah pulled another chair closer to the stove and settled in, eyes open, listening, committed now to whatever came next. He checked the clock nailed above the sink, its hands trembling with each gust. Midnight was coming fast. Roads would close themselves soon. If help was coming, it would not come tonight. Noah set the lantern lower, keeping shadows from the child's face. He breathed once, slow, and stayed where he was, guarding heat, time, and a fragile stranger's chance. The storm kept shouting, but the cabin answered with stubborn, living silence. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Subscribe and stay with us. Because sometimes one small act of kindness is all someone needs to keep going. Noah didn't sleep. He never did when someone new crossed his threshold. He sat with his back to the wall, boots still on, the lantern turned low so it wouldn't steal heat from the stove. The storm paced outside like an animal denied entry, hurling snow against the siding in dull, relentless thuds. Evelyn noticed. "You don't have to stay up," she said quietly. "I do," Noah replied. He said it without edge, like a fact that didn't require agreement. House rule. She nodded and didn't argue. That, too, mattered. Lila stirred and coughed once, then settled. Noah checked her again, changed the cloth, offered water by the spoon. He worked carefully, the way you did when there was no backup. He did not tell Evelyn what he was doing or why. He let his hands explain. When the kettle emptied, he rinsed it and set it back. "You can stay," he said, "but there are conditions." Evelyn straightened. "Of course." "Door stays locked," Noah said. "No wandering. No fires without me here. You eat what there is and don't apologize for it. In the morning, we'll see what the road looks like." She absorbed each point, then nodded. Agreed. Noah watched for the flinch, the offense. It didn't come. Instead, Evelyn's shoulders lowered, just a fraction. Relief, not entitlement. He handed her a folded blanket. Extra. Thank you. He didn't respond. Gratitude wasn't a currency he traded in. He took stock instead. Her boots were cracked at the seams. Her gloves had been patched with thread that didn't match. The coat was good, though well made, just worn. Not desperate, not careless, something in between. Outside, the wind pitched higher. The clock ticked. Noah stood and poured more water, then stopped when he saw Evelyn already on her feet, washing the cup she'd used. You don't have to. I know, she said. I will anyway. He let it go. Morning arrived as a gray suggestion rather than light. Snow had stacked high against the door. Noah shoved it open a foot at a time, bracing his shoulder and clearing a path with the shovel. The truck was there, buried to its mirrors. No tracks beyond it. The road had erased itself. Evelyn came up behind him, holding Lila bundled tight. Is it bad? It's honest, Noah said. We wait. She exhaled and nodded again. Then we wait. Back inside, Noah set out what he had. Oats, dried fruit, the last of the coffee. He cooked without ceremony, sliding a bowl across the table. Lila ate slowly, color creeping back into her cheeks. She looked at him once, curious, then focused on her spoon like it was serious work. Do you need anything? Evelyn asked. No, Noah said. Then, after a beat, if you're up to it, wood needs splitting. I am, she said. He showed her how to set the wedge, how to swing without wasting effort. She missed twice, then found the line. The log split clean. Lila watched from the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, eyes bright. Noah nodded once. Approval measured. By noon, the storm had spent itself into quiet. They worked and ate and kept the stove fed. No one spoke more than necessary. Boundaries held. Trust, the kind that didn't announce itself, took shape between the clack of wood and the steady heat of the room. Noah checked the road again. Still gone. We'll see tomorrow, he said. Evelyn met his gaze. Tomorrow, she agreed. The day folded in on itself, orderly and contained. Shelter had rules. Within them, something steadier than fear began to settle. The second night arrived without ceremony. Dusk pressed its palm against the windows, and the temperature slid lower, patient and exact. Noah fed the stove and listened to the sound of it catching, the crackle steadying the room. He checked Lila's forehead with the back of his hand. Warm, but no longer frightening. She's better, he said. Evelyn let out a breath she'd been holding all day. Thank you. He nodded and turned away, reaching for the kettle. The long night had its own work. He moved through it with practiced ease, water warmed, cloths folded, a thin soup stretched with rice and whatever else he could spare. He did not rush. Rushing made mistakes. Lila woke, hungry and alert, her voice small but firm. Is it still snowing? No, Noah said. It stopped. She considered this, then smiled as if the idea pleased her. It's quiet. It is, he agreed. They ate at the table together. Lila swung her feet, careful not to kick the legs. Evelyn watched her, then watched Noah, curiosity sharpening the edge of her relief. You've done this before, she said. Enough, Noah replied. He carried the dishes to the sink. Evelyn followed and dried without being asked, her movements efficient, not performative. They worked side by side, saying nothing. Outside, the world creaked as it cooled. Later, when the fire burned low and the lantern was dimmed, Lila curled on the bench with a book Noah hadn't opened in years. She traced the pictures with her finger, pausing to sound out a word. Noah corrected her once, gently, then left her to it. Evelyn spoke softly. She reads when she's nervous. Noah nodded. He had learned the language of small tells a long time ago. The night deepened. Wind returned, less angry now, more curious. It probed the seams of the cabin, testing. Noah checked the latch, then the window. He kept his back to the wall and his eyes moving, even as his body relaxed into the rhythm of watching. Evelyn noticed again. You don't trust easily. No, he said. Do you want to know why we were out there? She asked, not pressing. He considered the question. If you want to tell me, you can. She nodded, accepting the shape of that answer. Another time. Lila yawned, wide and dramatic, then set the book aside. Can I sleep now? Yes, Evelyn said, brushing her hair back. Noah fetched the spare pillow and laid it near the stove, close enough to warmth but far enough to be safe. Lila settled quickly, the kind of sleep that came from exhaustion, finally letting go. Her breathing evened. The room changed with it, the tension loosening its grip. Evelyn stood, unsure. Noah gestured to the chair. You can rest. I'll wake you if she needs you. She hesitated, then sat, folding herself small, hands clasped in her lap. Minutes passed, her shoulders slumped, her eyes closed. Noah stayed where he was. The long night stretched, then bent. He listened to the stove and the wind and the quiet between them. He thought of roads and storms and the way help arrived when it arrived, never sooner. He did not dwell. He kept watch. Near dawn, Lila shifted and sighed. Noah rose and checked her again, careful not to wake either of them. He adjusted the blanket, set another log on the fire, and stood by the window as the dark thinned to gray. Morning would come. Not fast, not easy, but it would come, and for now, that was enough. Morning did not arrive cleanly. It seeped in through the frost on the windows, a pale wash of light that revealed the truth without commentary. Snow lay piled against the cabin in uneven drifts, pressed there by the night's patience. The road beyond was a smooth white absence. Noah opened the door just enough to read the air, cold bit immediately, sharp and dry. He closed it and turned back inside. It didn't change, he said. Evelyn nodded from the chair, Lila rapped against her side. Then we adjust. That answer settled Noah more than he expected. He set water to heat and laid out what remained for breakfast. There was less now, but enough if handled right. He worked quietly, keeping things simple. Oats again, a little dried fruit, hot tea. Lila ate with focus, her appetite returning in small, determined bites. Color had come back to her face. Not much, but enough to matter. She asked questions about the stove, about the snow, about how far the river ran before it bent away from the road. Noah answered what he could and shrugged the rest. Can we go outside? She asked. Later, Noah said, after the sun's up. They spent the morning clearing what they could. Noah shoveled a path to the truck and tested the door. Frozen solid. He didn't force it. Forcing things cost more than waiting. Evelyn held the shovel when he needed a break and followed his lead without asking for instruction. By midday, the light had strengthened, but the road remained lost. No tracks, no sound of engines. The world had closed itself off with quiet finality. Evelyn leaned against the porch rail, looking out. I should have turned back sooner. You didn't, Noah said. We're here. She nodded, accepting the boundary of what could be changed. How long before help comes? When it does, Noah replied. Could be tomorrow, could be longer. She absorbed this, then squared her shoulders. Then we'll be careful. Inside, Noah set rules into motion again without naming them. Rations measured. Stove fed. The radio crackled but offered nothing. He turned it off and let the quiet stand. Lila slept in the afternoon, curled on the bench, the fever finally broken. Evelyn sat nearby, mending a torn seam on her glove with thread she carried in her pocket. Noah watched the steady movement of her hands. Not rushed, not idle. Thank you, she said suddenly, not looking up. He did not answer right away. Gratitude had a way of trying to turn into debt. He kept it from doing so. We'll see how the night goes, he said instead. She accepted that, too. As evening approached, the temperature dipped again. Noah added wood and checked the door. He laid out blankets and set the lantern low. The day had settled into something manageable, a pattern formed from necessity rather than comfort. Outside, the sky cleared, stars sharp and indifferent. Inside, the cabin held. They ate in companionable quiet. No promises were made, no plans beyond the next hour. The storm had passed, but its work remained. Morning had brought clarity, not solutions. Noah locked the door and took his place by the wall. Evelyn tucked Lila in and sat back down, hands folded, waiting for whatever came next. The day had asked its questions. They had answered what they could. By the third day, time settled into a quieter shape. Not comfort exactly, but rhythm. The storm had passed. Yet the road remained stubbornly absent, buried under drifts that caught the light and gave nothing back. Noah marked mornings by the stove and evenings by the sound of the cabin cooling, the wood ticking softly as if thinking. Lila woke early, stronger now, curiosity returning before appetite. She followed Noah through the cabin, careful not to crowd him, asking questions in thoughtful bursts. Why did the lantern hang there? How he knew when the stove wanted more wood, whether the river ever froze all the way through. He answered simply. She listened hard. Evelyn watched from the table, tea warming her hands. The sharp edge of panic had dulled, replaced by attentiveness that made her useful without announcement. She swept when Noah stepped outside. She set gloves near the stove before he noticed they were damp. She never rearranged anything that mattered. Conversation grew in small increments. Noah explained how snow changed texture near trees, how sound carried differently at night. Evelyn shared neutral details in return, offered without weight. Lila hated peas. Lila counted steps when nervous, facts that filled space without asking for judgment. On the fourth morning, sunlight struck the drifts and made them glitter, sharp and blinding. Noah shoveled again, testing the edges of the road, measuring effort rather than hoping. He did not promise results. He worked steadily until breath steamed and shoulders burned. Evelyn brought coffee in a dented mug and stood beside him. "You do not have to rush," she said. "I am not," he answered, and it was true. Lila waited at the doorway, bundled and smiling, the cold no longer frightening. Noah let her step outside briefly and showed her how to breathe through a scarf. She laughed when her breath turned white. Inside, the cabin felt fuller than it had any right to. Not crowded, simply occupied. The bench by the stove stayed warm, the clock ticked, meals were modest but shared. Evenings ended with cards or a story read aloud, Lila's voice gaining strength page by page. Noah noticed changes in himself without naming them. He cooked a little more than necessary. He repaired a loose hinge ignored for months. He slept slightly deeper, though he still woke at every sound, listening for what might ask entry. One afternoon, while sorting supplies, Evelyn paused. "We will not overstay," she said quietly. Noah met her gaze. "You are here because the road is not," he replied. "When it is, you will go." She nodded, accepting clarity without injury. The days passed like that. Useful, contained, human, nothing dramatic, nothing forced. Just people sharing space because circumstances required it, discovering the space could hold them all, carefully, for now. Noah kept the routine deliberate. Each morning he checked the stove, the latch, the sky, in that order. Each evening he counted supplies and adjusted portions without comment. Evelyn noticed and adapted, stretching meals with care, never asking how much was left. Lila learned the rules quickly. Boots by the door, gloves on the bench, quiet voices after dark. The cabin answered discipline with ease, holding warmth longer, feeling less fragile with every repeated habit. One evening, after cards were put away, Noah opened the door and let Lila step onto the porch again. The sky was clear, stars sharp and crowded. He pointed out a constellation she did not know, tracing it slowly with his finger. Evelyn watched from the doorway, silent, understanding that some lessons belong to place rather than people. When cold pressed too hard, they went back inside together, carrying the night with them, and the cabin closed around their quiet, steady breath. Nothing was said about what came next. Noah did not ask where they would go. Evelyn did not ask how he managed alone. The days did not answer either question. They simply continued, measured and intact, proving that shelter could be more than walls. and that time, handled carefully, could soften without breaking. For now, that was enough to carry everyone forward, one ordinary hour at a time, through the lingering cold and the light. The moment came without ceremony, no dramatic pause, no raised voice. It arrived the way weather did in this place, quietly, once conditions allowed. They were sitting at the table late in the afternoon. Lila had fallen asleep on the bench with a book open on her chest, her breathing even and deep. The stove hummed, settled into a steady burn. Outside, the light thinned toward evening. Evelyn folded a map she had been studying and set it aside. She did not look at Noah right away. "There's something I should tell you," she said. Noah kept his eyes on the kettle, listening to its low murmur. "You don't have to," he replied. It wasn't dismissal. It was an offering. "I know," she said, "but I want to." She waited until he turned. When he did, she met his gaze squarely, without apology. "My last name is Ward." Noah blinked once. The name carried weight even here, carried by radio fragments and freight labels, by conversations that reached Alaska late but intact. He did not react beyond that. He sat back and considered the information like a tool laid on the table. "The companies," she added, "unnecessarily. They're mine." He nodded, absorbing it. "All right." Evelyn exhaled, tension leaving her shoulders. "I didn't say anything because I didn't want it to change how you treated us." "It didn't," Noah said, "and it won't." She studied his face, searching for calculation or expectation. Finding none, she nodded slowly. "Good." Silence followed. Not awkward, simply new. Noah poured the tea and slid a cup across to her, the same as before. No ceremony, no distance added or removed. "I'm not here for favors," Evelyn said after a moment. "I don't expect anything." "I didn't think you were," Noah replied. She smiled faintly, the first real smile since arriving. "You're very calm about this." "Names don't change weather," he said, "or roads." That earned a quiet laugh, brief and genuine. The moment settled into something manageable, reshaped but intact. Outside, a raven crossed the sky, its shadow skimming the snow. Lila stirred and murmured, then slept on. Noah stood and adjusted the blanket without thinking. Evelyn watched him do it, noting the ease of the gesture, the absence of performance. "When the road opens," she said, "we'll leave." "Yes," Noah agreed. If stories like this matter to you, you're in the right place. Subscribe, and let's keep sharing them. And if it takes longer, then it takes longer. No bargains followed. No offers were made. The truth, once spoken, did not demand rearrangement. It simply existed alongside everything else. The stove, the snow, the child sleeping safely in borrowed warmth. Evelyn lifted her cup. "Thank you for listening." Noah inclined his head. "Thank you for telling me." Outside, the light faded. Inside, the cabin held steady. The truth had arrived and passed through without breaking anything. That, Noah thought, was how it should be. The road returned in pieces. Not all at once, not cleanly, but enough to be recognized. Noah saw it first from the porch, a dark line breaking through the white, where wind and time had done their quiet work. He stood there longer than necessary, measuring what it meant. Evelyn joined him, careful not to crowd. "Is it passable?" "Soon," Noah said. "Maybe today." She nodded, absorbing the weight of that word. Soon meant endings as much as beginnings. Inside, Lila was awake, humming to herself as she folded the blanket the way Noah had shown her. They spent the morning preparing without ceremony. Evelyn packed their few things neatly. Noah checked the truck, prying the door open with patience rather than force. The engine complained, then answered. He shut it off and let it rest, as if it deserved the courtesy. Lila stepped outside and stamped her boots, delighted by the sound. "We're leaving?" "Yes," Evelyn said gently. Lila considered this, then looked at Noah. "Thank you for the stove." He smiled once. It did its job. They ate one last meal together, modest and unremarkable. No one rushed. When it was done, Noah cleared the table while Evelyn zipped coats and tightened scarves. The cabin looked the same as it always had, but Noah noticed the difference anyway, the faint echo of shared days settling back into quiet. At the door, Evelyn paused. She reached into her pocket and drew out a card, holding it between two fingers. "If you ever need to reach me," she said, "for work or questions." Noah took the card and slipped it into his jacket without looking at it. "All right." She hesitated, then extended her hand. He shook it once, firm and brief. Lila hugged him without asking, arms quick and warm around his waist. He rested a hand on her shoulder until she pulled away. "Be careful," he said. "We will," Evelyn replied. They climbed into the truck. Noah stepped back and watched as it crawled down the reclaimed stretch of road, tires finding purchase where none had existed days before. At the bend, Evelyn lifted a hand. Noah returned the gesture, and then the truck was gone, swallowed by trees and distance. He stood there until the sound faded completely. The quiet that followed was familiar, but it had changed its tone. Noah went inside and closed the door, sliding the bolt home. He fed the stove, counted supplies, and set the kettle on out of habit. The card rested in his pocket, unexamined. He did not take it out. He cleaned, repaired, and settled back into routine, letting the day find its shape without interference. By afternoon, the light had shifted, and the cabin had resumed its steady breath. Nothing had been promised. Nothing had been asked. The shelter had done its work and released them when it could. Noah stood by the window once more, looking at the road now visible in full, and nodded to himself. Some crossings were meant to be temporary. That did not make them small. He turned back to the stove and the work at hand, carrying forward what remained useful, leaving the rest where it belonged, already part of the past. The quiet after their departure did not feel empty at first. Noah moved through the cabin with the ease of habit, resetting what had shifted. He folded the extra blanket, returned the chair to its usual place, and set the bench back against the wall. The stove answered as it always had, steady and dependable. For a few days, that was enough. Work returned in fragments. A neighbor needed an engine coaxed back to life. Another asked for help hauling supplies before the next freeze. Noah said yes when it made sense, and no when it didn't. He tracked the hours carefully, counting fuel, counting wear, counting what each job cost him as much as what it paid. The math never quite closed. The road stayed open, but barely. Freight arrived late and left early. Prices crept upward without announcement. Noah adjusted portions, then adjusted again. He repaired a trap instead of replacing it. He put off buying a new chain and sharpened the old one twice more than he should have. By midwinter, the strain showed itself in small, unremarkable ways. The generator sputtered longer before catching. The truck hesitated in the mornings. Noah's hands cracked despite the salve he rubbed in each night. He noticed these things and kept moving. He did not take out the card. When the radio crackled with news from farther south, he listened without expectation. Names and numbers passed through the air and out again, not meant for him. He turned it off and returned to the workbench, tightening a bolt until it held. One afternoon, a job fell through without warning. The man apologized. Embarrassed, Noah waved it off and loaded his tools back into the truck. On the drive home, the fuel gauge dipped lower than he liked. He recalculated in his head, then stopped at the river to check a line instead of going straight back. The catch was thin, not nothing, but not enough to turn the week. Noah packed it carefully and headed home as the light slid away. He ate standing up that night, the stove throwing heat that felt less generous than before. The notice came 2 days later, folded cleanly and tucked into the doorframe where the wind wouldn't take it. Noah read it once and set it on the table. He did not sit down. He filled the kettle, waited for it to boil, and poured the water slowly, watching steam rise and disappear. He tried to solve the problem the way he always had. He called in a favor that could be spared. He took a job farther out than usual and returned after dark, tired and paid less than promised. He cut another portion from the week and told himself it was temporary. At night, the cabin sounded different, not louder, just more present. Every creak carried weight. Noah woke earlier and slept lighter, his attention stretched thin. He checked the latch twice before turning in. He listened to the wind as if it might speak. The card remained in his jacket pocket, its edges softening with use. He knew exactly where it was. He also knew what it represented, and that knowledge pressed against his pride in a way he did not welcome. On the coldest morning of the month, the generator failed outright. Noah stood in the quiet and let it be quiet. He worked through the repair carefully, hands stiff, breath fogging the air. When it finally turned over, the relief was brief. The effort had taken something with it. That night, he sat at the table with the notice in front of him and the radio turned off. He did not argue with himself. He did not rehearse reasons. He reached into his jacket, took out the card, and set it beside the paper. He looked at both for a long moment, then folded the notice and slid it away. The card stayed where it was. Noah rested his hands on the table, steadying them, and made a decision shaped not by desperation, but by time running out. The next week arrived without mercy. Cold pressed harder, daylight thinned further, and the work Noah relied on failed to line up the way it usually did. He kept moving anyway, following routine as if discipline alone could bridge the gap. He rose before dawn, fed the stove, checked the latch, and stepped outside to read the sky. The answers never changed. The generator held, but only just. Each time it sputtered, Noah felt the margin shrink. He rationed fuel more aggressively, shutting it down earlier at night and restarting it later in the morning. The cabin grew colder during the dark hours. He layered blankets and slept in his clothes, waking stiff and slow. He drove farther for jobs and came back with less to show for it. One engine refused to cooperate despite his patience. Another repair was delayed when a part didn't arrive. Noah took responsibility without complaint, even when circumstances weren't his doing. Reputation mattered. It always had. The notice returned, this time slid fully under the door. Noah read it twice. The language was polite, impersonal, final. He placed it beside the first and aligned the edges carefully, as if order could soften meaning. He did not crumple either page. He ate what remained without ceremony. Meals were smaller now, functional rather than satisfying. He noted the date on the calendar and crossed off days with a pencil worn down to its stub. The marks looked heavier than they should have. At night, the cabin no longer felt neutral. It pressed in, asking questions he didn't answer. He checked the stove more often than necessary, adjusting a draft that was already correct. He cleaned tools that were already clean. Motion kept the quiet from closing too tightly. On the third night, the wind rose again, not violent but persistent, finding seams and worrying them. Noah stood at the window and watched snow drift across the road he had worked so hard to reclaim. The dark swallowed it easily. He thought about selling equipment, then dismissed the idea. That would solve tomorrow at the cost of every day after. He thought about leaving for work farther south, then dismissed that too. Running didn't fit him. It never had. The generator failed again before dawn, this time with a sound that told him it was finished. Noah stood in the cold, breath sharp, hands numb as he confirmed what he already knew. He shut it down and leaned his forehead against the casing for a moment longer than necessary. Inside, the stove carried the load alone. It worked harder, burned faster. Noah fed it and watched the flames consume what he could not replace quickly. The math had finally closed, and the answer was no. He sat at the table with the notices laid out neatly, the card placed beside them. The edges of the card were worn now, softened by weeks of friction against fabric. He turned it over once, then back again, reading the name without hearing it. Noah did not feel anger. He felt clarity. Pride shifted into something quieter, something that could bend without breaking. He gathered his tools and laid them out, checking each one, counting what he could still offer. His hands moved steadily, his breathing even. When the light crept back into the room, pale and reluctant, Noah stood and put on his jacket. He slid the notices into a drawer and left them there. The card went into his pocket, not hidden, not displayed. He stepped outside and locked the door behind him. The cold met him fully, honest, and sharp. Noah took one breath, then another, and walked toward the truck. carrying with him the decision he had finally allowed himself to make. Noah made the call from the truck, engine idling, heater barely holding its ground. He did not rush it. He checked the number twice before pressing connect, then waited as the line rang. Once, twice. "Evelyn Ward," came the answer, calm and unguarded. "It's Noah," he said. There was a pause, brief but unmistakable. "I'm glad you called," she replied. "Are you all right?" "Yes," Noah said. He chose the word carefully. "I'm calling because I'm looking for work." Another pause, longer this time. "All right," Evelyn said. "Tell me what you do." Noah did not embellish. He spoke plainly about engines, logistics, winter access, the realities of moving goods when roads disappeared and margins vanished with them. He described problems he had solved and ones he had learned to avoid. He did not mention notices or cold nights or generators that refused to wake. He let skill speak for itself. Evelyn listened without interrupting. When he finished, she asked questions that mattered. What kind of equipment he was used to, how he handled delays, what he did when plans failed. Noah answered each one directly. "I'm not asking for help," he said when the questions paused. "I'm asking for a job." "I understand," Evelyn said, "and I believe you." She did not offer money. She did not apologize. She told him about a position that existed because systems often forgot places like his, coordinating supply routes, advising teams that planned from desks far away. It was work that required experience rather than credentials, judgment rather than polish. "It would mean travel," she said. "Training. You'd be starting where you're needed, not where it's comfortable." "That's fine," Noah replied. "Then come south," Evelyn said. "We'll see how it fits." They ended the call without ceremony. Noah sat for a moment with the phone in his hand, letting the engine's vibrations settle. He did not feel rescued. He felt employed. The next days moved quickly. He secured the cabin, arranged for a neighbor to check on it, packed what mattered, and left the rest in order. There was no grand farewell. He locked the door and turned the key once, trusting the place to hold until he returned. The flight south felt unreal, altitude and distance compressing what had always felt vast. Noah watched the landscape change beneath him, snow giving way to dark water and lights that did not sleep. He kept his jacket on and his hands busy, reviewing notes Evelyn had sent, marking questions in the margins. At the facility, no one treated him like a curiosity. They treated him like a problem solver. He listened more than he spoke at first, absorbing processes and expectations. When he spoke, it was to clarify, to ground plans in conditions he knew intimately. Evelyn checked in once, briefly. "You settling?" "Yes," he said. "Good," she replied. "Work starts early." It did. Days filled with routes and contingencies, with conversations that moved forward and decisions that stuck. Noah learned what he needed to learn and taught what he could. He missed the quiet, but not the uncertainty. One evening, after a long day, he stood by a window and watched rain streak the glass. He thought of the cabin, the stove, the road that came and went. He did not regret the call. Asking for work had not cost him himself. It had given him room to keep being who he was, with better tools and a wider reach. The first weeks tested Noah in ways cold never had. The facility ran on schedules that assumed roads always existed and supplies arrived because they were ordered. He learned quickly that systems failed differently here. Not suddenly, like a generator dying in the dark, but quietly, buried under layers of approval and distance. He started early each day, arriving before most of the team, reviewing maps and shipment logs while the building still hummed with cleaning crews and warming lights. The scale of it unsettled him at first. Screens replaced horizons. Decisions affected places he had never seen, people whose names blurred into reports. He took notes by hand anyway, grounding himself in the habit. Training was thorough, but impersonal. Procedures were explained once and expected to hold. Noah followed them, then asked questions that slowed meetings down. What happened when ice broke early? What happened when drivers refused routes after dark? What happened when fuel costs doubled overnight. Some answers came easily, others didn't come at all. He learned where his experience fit and where it didn't. He stumbled once, misjudging a timeline because he trusted a forecast that didn't deserve it. The delay rippled outward, small but visible. Noah owned it without excuse and adjusted. The correction mattered more than the error. People noticed his restraint. He did not argue to be heard. He waited, then spoke when it counted. His suggestions were practical, sometimes inconvenient, always grounded. Gradually, they stopped dismissing his caution as pessimism and started calling it planning. Travel followed. Short flights at first, then longer ones. Facilities built for volume rather than survival. Warehouses that never slept. He listened to dock workers and drivers, asked what failed most often, wrote it down. He did not promise solutions. He promised attention. Evelyn remained present but distant. She checked in at measured intervals, never hovering. When they spoke, it was about work. She asked what he needed and accepted the answers without negotiation. When she disagreed, she said so plainly, then asked him to justify his position. Sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't, and learned why. The pace wore on him. Evenings were louder here, filled with movement and light that refused to dim. Noah found quiet where he could, walking after work, standing by windows, letting his mind catch up to his body. He missed the stove, the way heat could be counted. He did not miss the uncertainty. One afternoon, a shipment bound for remote communities stalled due to an oversight no one wanted to claim. The delay threatened weeks of disruption. Meetings circled without progress. Noah waited, then outlined a reroute that required extra coordination but fewer assumptions. It was not elegant. It was workable. They tried it. The shipment moved. After that, people sought him out, not for approval, but for perspective. He answered carefully, aware of the weight now attached to his words. Each decision echoed farther than it used to. He adjusted to that, too. Late one evening, Evelyn stopped by his office doorway. "You're settling," she said. "Yes," Noah replied. She studied him for a moment. "You're changing?" "No," he said after a beat. "I'm stretching." She smiled at that, brief and approving. "Good." When she left, Noah returned to the map on his desk, tracing routes that connected places he understood to places he was learning. The world felt bigger now, less forgiving, but also more reachable. He did not feel lost inside it. He felt placed. Responsibility arrived before recognition. Noah found himself looped into decisions that once passed above him, copied on messages that assumed his input rather than requested it. The shift was subtle, almost polite, but unmistakable. Expectations followed quickly. The first real test came with a northern supply corridor no one wanted to touch. ICE reports conflicted. Costs were rising. Delays threatened contracts that mattered more politically than practically. The proposed solution involved speed and optimism. Noah read it twice and set it aside. He built an alternative from scratch. Not cleaner, not cheaper at first glance, but survivable. He mapped redundancies, added buffers that would irritate accountants, and flagged risks no one had quantified because they were inconvenient. When he presented it, the room grew quiet. "This slows us down," someone said. "It keeps us moving," Noah replied. They argued. Not cruelly, not loudly, but with the friction of competing priorities. Noah stayed measured. He didn't defend himself. He defended conditions. When the meeting ended, no decision had been made. That night, the weather shifted faster than forecasted. ICE closed a secondary route without warning. By morning, the original plan was no longer viable. Noah's alternative was still standing. They implemented it. The corridor held. After that, his workload doubled. Questions came earlier, problems landed on his desk before they escalated. Noah adjusted his routines, arriving even earlier, leaving later when needed. He tracked outcomes, not credit. When things worked, he documented why. When they didn't, he documented that too. He traveled north again, this time with authority rather than observation. At a small hub near the coast, he walked the site with local crews, listening more than directing. He noticed inefficiencies no one complained about because they'd always existed. He didn't demand change. He proposed it step by step. Some resisted, others didn't. Progress came unevenly. Evelyn joined one review call, listening without expression. When Noah finished outlining adjustments, she asked a single question. Can this scale? Yes, he said. If you accept that, it won't look uniform. She nodded. Proceed. That word carried weight. Noah felt it settle without thrill or fear, just responsibility. Pressure followed success. Deadlines tightened, resources were tested. Noah made mistakes, small ones, and corrected them quickly. He delegated when he could and stepped in when he had to. He slept less, but not recklessly. He ate when reminded. He kept moving. One afternoon, a junior coordinator challenged his call in front of a full team. The objection was sharp, technically sound, and incomplete. Noah let it land, then walked through the implications calmly. He didn't dismiss the concern, he placed it in context. After the meeting, the coordinator apologized. Noah waved it off. You were right to ask, he said, just not finished. The work began to show beyond internal metrics. Delays shortened, complaints dropped, remote teams reported fewer emergency calls. The system didn't become perfect, it became resilient. Late one evening, Noah stood alone in the operations room. Lights dimmed, screens cycling through live data. He recognized patterns now, not just problems. He understood how decisions here echoed outward, how margins protected lives he would never meet. Evelyn joined him without announcement. You're proving useful, she said. That was the goal, Noah replied. She studied the screens. You could do more. Maybe, he said, but not all at once. She smiled slightly. Good answer. When she left, Noah remained where he was, hands resting on the edge of the console. He thought of the cabin, the stove, the narrow road that taught him patience. The scale had changed. The principles hadn't. He turned back to the work, steady and deliberate, knowing that value wasn't proven in moments of rescue, but in systems that held when no one was watching. The decision came quietly, folded into a routine briefing like any other. A seasonal review required on-site verification. Conditions were shifting. Data needed context. Noah was the obvious choice, though no one said it that way. He accepted without comment and began preparing the same day. Travel north felt different now. Familiar, but no longer singular. Noah packed with efficiency, selecting tools and notes rather than comforts. He reviewed reports during the flight, but his attention drifted as the landscape sharpened beneath him. Snowfields widened, roads thinned, the world simplified. At the regional hub, he met crews who had heard his name before meeting him. The recognition was understated, professional. They spoke in specifics, not praise. Noah preferred it that way. He walked sites, checked equipment, listened to complaints that were really warnings. He wrote everything down. From there, he continued farther, following routes that curved toward places he knew by instinct rather than map. When the truck turned onto the road leading toward his old cabin, Noah felt the shift in his chest before he acknowledged it. The road was clearer than he expected, maintained, passable. He stopped at the bend where snow once swallowed everything. The trees stood the same, the wind sounded familiar. Noah cut the engine and listened, letting memory settle without rushing it. He didn't stay long. The cabin came into view unchanged, patient as ever. Noah unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was cold but clean. Nothing had been disturbed. He moved through the space slowly, noting what held and what needed attention. The stove waited, he fed it, and watched the flames catch. Work came first. He assessed the road conditions, documented improvements, flagged vulnerabilities that data alone wouldn't reveal. He spoke with locals who recognized him without ceremony. They talked about supply timing, fuel access, the way winter arrived earlier now. Noah listened and adjusted his notes. In the evenings, he returned to the cabin and worked by lamplight. He repaired what had worn and replaced what could no longer be trusted. The generator remained silent beyond recovery. Noah accepted that. Not everything returned. One night, a storm rolled through without warning. Wind rattled the windows and snow layered quickly. Noah fed the stove and checked the latch. Movements ingrained. The cabin held. He sat at the table and reviewed his reports, the present and past overlapping without conflict. The next morning, the road remained open, maintained, reliable. Noah smiled once at that. Before leaving, he made one final adjustment. He marked the cabin for seasonal use rather than permanent isolation, updating access notes and maintenance schedules. It wasn't abandonment, it was integration. At the hub, his findings carried weight. Recommendations were accepted without delay. Resources were allocated. Timelines shifted to reflect reality rather than optimism. Noah watched the system respond and felt the satisfaction of something working as intended. On his last evening north, he stood outside the cabin and looked down the road, now clearly defined. He didn't feel torn. The place remained part of him, not in opposition to what he'd become, but in support of it. Noah locked the door and left the key where it belonged. When he flew south again, the distance felt measured, not absolute. He carried with him evidence rather than nostalgia, purpose rather than longing. The return north had not pulled him backward. It had confirmed where he stood. The conversation happened without ceremony, which was how Noah preferred it. Evelyn called him into her office late in the afternoon, after most of the building had emptied and the noise of the day had settled into a distant hum. She didn't offer a seat. She didn't need to. "We're restructuring," she said. "Not because something failed, because something worked." Noah waited. "We want you to lead a permanent operations unit," Evelyn continued. "Northern logistics, remote access, contingency planning, authority to design systems, not just fix them." He absorbed the words slowly, not weighing ambition against loyalty, not measuring ego. He was calculating impact, scope, cost. "It would require relocation," she added. "Some travel, not constant." "I wouldn't disappear," Noah said. "No," Evelyn replied. "You'd be visible." That mattered more than she realized. Noah thought of the cabin, now folded into a broader network rather than cut off from it. He thought of the road, maintained because it was finally seen. He thought of the people who relied on systems working quietly. "What happens to the field work?" he asked. "You still go," Evelyn said. "You decide when." Noah nodded once. The offer didn't ask him to abandon what shaped him. It asked him to apply it deliberately. "I'll need conditions," he said. Evelyn smiled slightly. "I expected that." They negotiated without tension. Clear authority, clear limits. Time allocated for on-site verification. No pressure to soften realities for convenience. The terms were practical, not indulgent. When they finished, Noah extended his hand. She shook it. "Welcome," she said. The transition unfolded steadily. Noah assembled a team chosen for competence rather than polish. He trained them to question assumptions and document failures without blame. Meetings shortened. Decisions clarified. The work gained shape. He moved into a modest place near the facility, close enough to walk when he needed to think. He didn't fill it with much. A table, a chair, maps on the wall, order without excess. On a scheduled visit north, he brought supplies to the cabin and stayed one night, not out of necessity, but respect. The stove lit easily, the quiet felt earned, he slept well. In the morning, he left the place ready for its purpose. Seasonal, functional, present without demanding permanence. The systems Noah built began to hold under pressure, not perfectly, but honestly. When storms hit, responses came earlier. When routes failed, alternatives already existed. The work didn't eliminate hardship. It reduced surprise. Evelyn observed from a distance, intervening rarely. When she did, it was precise. Their professional rhythm settled into mutual trust, defined by outcomes rather than reassurance. One evening, after a long day, Noah stood on the facility roof and watched lights spread across the city. He didn't feel pulled between worlds, he felt extended into one. The choice he'd made required no sacrifice. It asked for alignment. He called the neighbor who watched the cabin and thanked him. He authorized funds for road upkeep without ceremony. He signed off on schedules that included margins no one would notice unless they vanished. Months passed. The work stabilized. The team grew capable without him hovering. Noah stepped back where he could and forward where he was needed. The balance held. On a clear morning, he reviewed a report confirming the Northern Corridor's resilience through the season. No emergencies, no headlines, success measured by absence. Noah closed the file and leaned back, hands resting easily. He hadn't traded one life for another. He'd built a bridge between them. Choice, he realized, wasn't about loss. It was about refusing false oppositions. He stood and returned to the work, steady and unburdened, carrying forward a life that fit because it had been chosen carefully, without spectacle, and without leaving anything essential behind. The work no longer announced itself with urgency. That was how Noah knew it was holding. Systems ran, reports arrived on time, and problems surfaced early enough to be handled without spectacle. Success showed up as quiet continuity. On a clear morning, he walked to the facility instead of driving, hands in his pockets, breath steady in the cool air. The city moved around him with practiced indifference. He liked that. It meant no one was waiting for something to break. At his desk, Noah reviewed overnight updates. Routes remained open, weather contingencies activated where needed, no emergencies flagged. He signed off and passed the file along without comment. The team didn't need reassurance. They needed consistency. Later, he stepped into a meeting already underway. Decisions were being made without him, thoughtfully, with the same language he had insisted on early. Conditions were acknowledged. Assumptions questioned. Margins preserved. Noah listened, then nodded once and left them to it. In the afternoon, he received a message from the north. Routine maintenance completed. Road clear, cabin secure. He read it once and archived it. That evening, Noah packed lightly for a short trip. Not for work, not strictly. He flew north on a small plane that skimmed low over familiar land. The scale felt right now. Nothing exaggerated. Nothing diminished. The cabin greeted him without ceremony. He unlocked the door, stepped inside, and set his bag down. The stove lit easily. The quiet settled around him without pressure. He cooked a simple meal and ate at the table, watching light fade through the window. He didn't inventory the space. He didn't linger over what had been hard. He checked what mattered, tightened what needed tightening, and let the rest be. In the morning, he walked the road a short distance and turned back. It no longer asked to be reclaimed. It existed as part of something larger. Before leaving, Noah wrote a note and placed it in the drawer with the old notices. Now irrelevant. Not a declaration, just a record. Dates, conditions. What held, what changed. He locked the cabin and left the key where it belonged. Back south, the weeks passed steadily. The work continued to prove itself through absence of crisis. Noah met with teams, traveled when necessary, and stayed put when it wasn't. He didn't chase expansion. He protected function. Evelyn stopped by one afternoon with a report in hand. "We're being asked how this works," she said. Noah looked up. "It works because it's honest." She smiled. "That's not the answer they want." "It's the one they need," he replied. She nodded and left him to it. On the way home that night, Noah paused on a bridge and looked out over the water. The reflection of lights wavered, then steadied. He thought of the stove, the road, the systems now carrying weight beyond any single place. Nothing essential had been lost. Nothing false had been gained. What remained was work that mattered, places that held, and a life shaped not by rescue or sacrifice, but by steady choice. Noah turned and walked on, unburdened, carrying forward what endured. The world doesn't change all at once. It changes when ordinary people choose kindness. If you believe that too, subscribe and be here for the next story.